A cold drizzle tapped the glass of a parked black sedan at 4:12 p.m. The engine was off. Inside, a man didn't move. His eyes were fixed on a moment that felt too gentle to interrupt, too strange to look away from. Have you ever witnessed a scene that felt like it was staged by the universe itself? You're wondering why he's still sitting there silently, right? I'll connect it all soon. Don't skip. Elias Harper never parked this early, not once in the last 5 years. But today was different. His calendar had a gap, a rare tear in a life stitched too tightly with meetings, investors, keynotes, and numbers that had once thrilled him, but now sounded hollow. Where are you watching this story from right now? Maybe you already know someone like him, a man who built a world but wasn't sure if he built a home. At 52, Elias was one of the wealthiest minds in artificial intelligence infrastructure. He didn't just invest in the future, he coded it, funded it, scaled it, and shipped it into existence. His company, Helix Neural Systems, was a pioneer in language learning algorithms for early education. It was valued at figures most people only see in news tickers. But success has a quiet side, doesn't it? The side no one narrates. His daughter, Alina, was 8 now. She carried his late wife's eyes, the same calm amber shade that used to soften every room she entered. His wife, Nadia, had passed away when Alina was barely 2, after a sudden illness that arrived like a glitch no software could debug. After that, Elias had raised Alina the way he built Helix, with precision, outsourcing, efficiency, and ambition. Tutors instead of talks, drivers instead of walks, luxury instead of presence. And somewhere along the way, without realizing, he had taught her a dangerous equation: value equals possession. But today, through the school fence, that equation was being rewritten. There she stood, Alina, leaning slightly forward, elbows resting on cold iron bars. Beside her, a child who looked like she belonged to a different world entirely, yet somehow belonged to this moment more than anyone else. Her shoes were soaked, mismatched, a size too large, tied with fraying laces. Her coat had lost its color, washed by seasons rather than machines. Her hair was pulled back not by style, but necessity. A tiny blue hair clip kept it in place, like a bookmark in a life that kept losing pages. Can you feel the contrast without it being said? The girl held a notebook, not new, not gifted, found, rescued from abandonment, like she had rescued knowledge from a life that abandoned stability. She tapped the page with a pencil shorter than her fingers, explaining algebra with a certainty even adults envy. And Alina listened, truly listened. No impatience, no superiority, no distance, just wonder, just curiosity, just human connection. Do you think children sense truth faster than adults do? And then the line that made the viewers fall a little in love with the girl came softly, almost accidentally, like a feather landing. It helps if you treat the problem like a friend, not a puzzle you're angry at. A beat of silence. Alina whispered back, "I never thought about it like that." Another beat. The rain paused. The world held its breath for a millisecond longer than usual. Can you feel that silence between them? Have you ever seen a moment like this? Elias stepped out of the car, slowly, not because he was dramatic, but because he was reverent. His coat brushed past the raindrops quietly. His shoes were polished, but his heart suddenly wasn't sure if polish meant anything anymore. Alina turned, her face lit up not with embarrassment for speaking to a homeless child, but excitement that her father had arrived to witness the person who made math feel kind again. Before Elias could speak, the girl spoke first, not with algebra, but with something heavier. "I wish I could hear lessons from inside again, not just through the walls." You're wondering who she is and why she speaks like someone who has already lost a lifetime, right? Stay close. The story is listening back to you, too. Elias knelt, not to match her height, but to honor her existence. Knowledge shouldn't have borders, he said. And the girl, with a tiny shrug of someone who had rehearsed disappointment more than hope, replied, "But borders always find us first." That line sat in the air longer than any billionaire title ever had, because the richest man in the city was not the one parked outside the fence. It was the child who held a pencil like a key and used math like a bridge. Where do you think this story will lead next? If you leave now, you might miss the piece that changes everything. The tires whispered over wet asphalt as the city blurred past the windows like watercolor streaks. No sirens, no dramatic music, just the soft hum of rain still clinging to the roof of the car. A sound that made every thought feel slower, heavier, clearer. Where do you think a man's mind travels when silence sits beside him in the passenger seat? Elias didn't ask many questions during the drive, not because he lacked them, but because some moments demand less excavation and more witness. In the back seat, Elena and the girl, Samira Cole, traded small discoveries, library cards, favorite constellations, why prime numbers feel honest, why science always asks you to try again gently. Their laughter was unfiltered, not loud, but luminous. Can you hear the softness of children finding common language? Samira had insisted on sitting behind, close to Elena. Maybe comfort travels sideways, not upward. What do you think she felt riding in a car warmer than any night she'd spent this winter? Don't skip. The real truth will connect every moment. You clicked because you know stories like this must be heard. Elias exhaled, watching the rearview mirror like it was a cinema frame he never expected to direct. He was used to screens filled with data streams, neural maps, quarterly projections, but this screen held something more complex than any algorithm: trust in its earliest form. The public library arrived like a cathedral of ordinary lives: wide steps, cloud-fogged windows, flyers taped slightly crooked, job fairs, food drives, winter coat exchanges, literacy programs, community chess nights. Life wasn't neat here, but it was sincere. Have you ever seen a building that holds more hope than symmetry? Samira stepped out first, notebook tucked under her arm, the blue hair clip still in place like a small flag of persistence. She paused only once, looking up at the carved stone letters above the entrance. Her lips moved, almost reading them like a spell. Public library. Do you think places remember the children who return to them for warmth? Inside, rows of books breathed the smell of paper and endurance. The air was calm, tempered by quiet footsteps and whispered pages turning. But calm doesn't always mean healed, does it? They found her mother exactly where Samira said she'd be: corner computer station, second row from the reference desk, seat 14B. A woman wrapped in a borrowed wool shawl, filling forms online like someone stitching torn fabric with limited thread. Her posture carried exhaustion, not defeat, yet. Do you recognize the weight of someone who is trying not to fall apart in public? She turned, and the world slowed again. Her eyes met Elias first, then Elena. Alarm flickered, brief, instinctive, practiced, like a bird recognizing a shadow before the shape. Do you think caution has a memory too? Samira, she whispered, standing, chair scraping softly behind her. Who brought you here? Samira's voice came early in the chapter, the first line of dialogue, small but seismic. Mom, it's okay. They listened. They listened. Not helped yet, not rescued yet, but listened. Her mother, Leona Cole, looked at Elias the way a locked door studies a key it's not sure belongs to it. Do you think rejection becomes a default language when you've been spoken to harshly for too long? Elias lifted a hand, slow, non-threatening, like someone asking permission from the air itself. I saw your daughter teaching mine through the school fence. I wanted to understand the source of that brilliance. Leona blinked, a mix of pride and protective ache tightening her throat. You're wondering if this is the moment she fears the most, right? I'll connect it all. Stay close. If you skip now, the moment that explains everything might pass you by. She sat back down, but her shoulders didn't relax, not yet. What do you think he expected him to say next? Investment, Elias said quietly, not charity. I don't believe talent should be invisible just because stability vanished first. Leona almost laughed, a reflex without humor. People like us don't get investments, sir. We get instructions. Find work. Stay quiet. Don't be seen. Elias shook his head gently. Instructions don't build bridges. Recognition does. A beat, another breath held between words, and then she broke. Not loudly, not theatrically, but like ice melting into confession. Tears gathered without falling immediately, shining like unsent messages in her lower lids. We're not fine, Elias, she said, voice fracturing at the edges. I lost my job 6 months ago. Office administration, scheduling, operations, the things no one notices until they collapse. Samira placed a hand on her mother's sleeve, no melodrama, just grounding. Leona continued, the reveal now steady and unstoppable in its honesty. No permanent address means no hiring system accepts me. No childcare means even if someone did, I can't afford to leave her anywhere safe. Shelters are full, car nights are cold. Food travels one direction, to her first, always her first. Do you think the audience's understanding just shifted softly? One emotional reveal, no noise, just truth rearranging the frame. Helix neural systems didn't make Elias rich. Listening did. Seeing did. Recognizing invisible potential did. He knelt again, this time not to honor existence, but to honor future. You think wealth sits in bank accounts, he said, but today it's sitting here, beside a pencil, beside persistence, beside a mother who keeps filling forms even when the world keeps returning errors. Can you feel the story turning towards something calmer now? Leona wiped her face, finally letting the tears fall. Why us? She said. Elias glanced at Elena, then Samira. Because the greatest asset you carry is not need, but potential, and potential should never meet a fence without someone opening a gate on the other side. The rain had stopped, but the world still felt washed. Some decisions arrive like thunder, others like a door opening with no sound at all. Which kind of decision do you think changes a life more permanently? Elias didn't rehearse what he was about to say. He simply recognized the shape of a need that was not asking for rescue, but for a chance to become visible again. You subscribed because you know stories like this must be heard. Stay till the end. If you leave now, you might miss the piece that changes everything. At 4:47 p.m., in a corner of the library where the Wi-Fi signal blinked weaker, but human signal blinked stronger, he spoke a sentence that didn't sound like philanthropy. It sounded like direction. My foundation needs an operations lead, not someone we carry, but someone who can carry systems. Leona looked up. Her breath didn't break this time. Her assumptions did. Do you think she knew this was the moment the story had been building toward? He continued, slower. I can offer temporary housing near the city outskirts and a salaried role. Logistics, scheduling, community program structure, the work you already know how to do. Not charity, not rescue, not pity. A job that had edges, expectations, dignity. A contract that treated ability as currency. The library clock ticked, not dramatic, just steady. Have you ever noticed how ordinary clocks feel cinematic when the stakes are human? Leona's voice arrived careful, thin, like someone testing a bridge before stepping. And Samira? Elias glanced at the notebook under the girl's arm, edges softened from years of use. She earned school because she already earned knowledge, he said. I'm only removing the border, not writing the outcome. The audience is probably asking, why didn't he do this earlier? Why wait until now? Don't skip. The story is answering, even when the characters speak less. Samira, sat cross-legged on a library beanbag nearby, flipping pages of an astronomy book as if casually studying galaxies while unknowingly rewriting her own. Do you think destiny feels smaller when it's happening? Elias added a quiet beat of rhythm the competitor would admire. If you walk away now, you might miss the part that connects every silence. She looked at him, then at Alina, then back at him. The disbelief was fading, not replaced by trust yet, replaced by possibility, which always arrives first. Leona swallowed. We don't take handouts, Elias. Elias nodded, not offended, understanding. Good, then you'll treat this like work, not rescue. A beat, not spoken, but felt. Respect finally meeting someone who expected nothing in return but effort. The first 200 words had hooked curiosity. The next 300 were hooking attachment to transformation. Elias pulled out his phone, not for theatrics, but for coordinates. The address wasn't typed into a map app. It was typed into a future that finally had a postal code again. Meanwhile, Alina sat beside Samira on the library steps outside. No algebra, no notebooks open, just two children dangling feet in puddles, comparing who could skip stones farther once the water settled. Do you think healing already started without being announced? Leona watched through the glass doors. Her face tightened again, but not from fear, from a mother's realization that someone had finally seen her child, not as homeless, but limitless. And here comes the chapter's single emotional shock reveal, the one that shifts understanding without sensationalism. Elias walked beside her, following her gaze. You thought that moment at the fence was tutoring, he said softly, but it was a resume written in chalk, not for a school, for a soul that needed to learn what Alina needed to unlearn. Pause. The audience now understands the fence scene differently. It wasn't a math lesson, it was a human lesson using math as the language. Do you think Samira knew she was teaching more than algebra that day? Leona whispered, almost to herself. She gave Alina confidence without knowing Alina would give her a school. Elias corrected gently. No, he said. Samira gave Alina humility. The confidence was just the visible side effect. The earlier chapter's contrast was not about rich versus poor. It was about seen versus unseen. And the unseen child quietly taught the seen child how to look outward for the first time. Do you think the world felt less divided in that moment? If you skip now, that realization might pass you by. The agreement they drafted was simple, dignified, human. Housing for 18 months max, a job that Leona would be evaluated in, school fees covered for Samira based on ability, not sympathy. No public announcements, no trophies, no dependency. Just a bridge, not a wheelchair. Transactional, yes, but dignified always. Because the foundation didn't only hire Leona for her organizational skill, it hired her for her lived understanding of broken systems. And it didn't admit Samira to school because she lacked privilege. It admitted her because she carried brilliance without paperwork. And paperwork should never be the proof of genius. Have you ever felt that too? At 5:28 p.m., Leona said something that completed the chapter's single emotional DNA perfectly. Then we'll rebuild standing, not leaning. Elias smiled finally. That's the only way bridges deserve to exist. Time didn't announce itself with fireworks or headlines.
It arrived the way winter becomes spring, quietly, one ordinary frame at a time. Do you feel the rhythm of time passing when you look back, or only when you're living inside it? Elias wondered the same thing 11 years ago, right here, watching a life change not through speeches, but through moments breathing softly into one another. 6 months after that library afternoon, the same black sedan no longer parked outside iron fences to observe contrasts. It parked beside community centers, food distribution points, outreach shelters, and planning meetings where ideas mattered more than influence. Have you ever noticed how the purpose of a place shifts once the people inside it do? Leona Harper was no longer the cautious mother sitting at 14B in a borrowed shawl. She was now Leona Cole, Director of Community Systems at the Everrise Foundation, the very organization Elias built to solve problems he once assumed were someone else's responsibility. The office she walked into every morning didn't look like a penthouse lobby. It looked like a workplace built for impact, not admiration. Warm wood floors, overfilled whiteboards, paper coffee cups, folders labeled with urgency rather than ego. Can you picture the difference between luxury and intention? At 8:03 a.m. on her first day as director, Leona stood before her new team of 23 people, none of them wearing designer labels, none of them needing to. She wasn't introduced by status. She was recognized by capability proven quietly. You're probably wondering what a director who once slept in a car brings to a conference table, right? Stay close. The story is answering through action. She redesigned intake forms so they didn't ask for proof people rarely had, but for needs people rarely admitted. She created childcare microgrants for single parents starting jobs, knowing well that opportunity dies fastest when supervision is too expensive. She removed address requirements from hiring pipelines inside the foundation itself, replacing them with identity verification partners that met people where they were, not where systems wished they lived. Do you think she realized she was rewriting the system that once rejected her? Elias watched her work unfold, not like an employer tracking productivity, but like a man tracking transformation. Because this wasn't about ROI, it was about human yield. Samira Cole, the child who once solved algebra by observing chalkboards through fogged windows, was now 15 years old, sitting inside classrooms again, not outside them. She attended East Bridge Public Academy, an high-achieving school that accepted brilliance even when its paperwork arrived late. She wasn't admitted like a rescued artifact. She was admitted like a student returning to her rightful environment. Do you think the classroom walls felt kinder once they no longer divided her from knowledge? She excelled academically, but more beautifully socially too. She joined debate club not to compete, but to understand voices she once overheard. She started a peer tutoring circle after school, teaching math not with animated gestures, but gentle patience, the same softness she once offered Alina through a fence. Have you ever seen a child teach not to feel bigger, but to make others feel less small? Alina Harper had changed too, but not by copying Samira. She changed by seeing Samira succeed. Empathy often arrives not when we are told to feel, but when we are allowed to witness. Do you agree? Alina was no longer the entitled child her teachers feared would grow brilliant but hollow. She was now a 19-year-old college student studying education policy and community psychology. She tutored children in low-income neighborhoods every Thursday, not to fix them, to learn from them. Can you feel the symmetry of life finally becoming fairer without becoming fictional? But fairness still had friction. The story did not pretend systemic barriers dissolve overnight. Leona still had meetings where funding pipelines stalled, approvals lagged, bureaucracy argued back silently, budgets thinned unpredictably, and program directors wrestled with invisible ceilings no single person created, but society inherited collectively. Do you think the obstacles felt less heavy because they weren't villains? One evening at 6:19 p.m., Elias sat with Leona on the foundation balcony, both holding paper cups of lukewarm tea. The skyline wasn't glamorous, it was honest, the kind of skyline you notice only when your heart is calm enough to look outward. "She's thriving," Elias said, meaning both girls. "Not because we built a ladder, but because she already carried wings." Leona smiled. No bitterness, no grand conclusions, just calm recognition. "And your daughter is thriving too," she replied, not because she had privilege, but because she finally learned how to use it without owning it. A soft pause. A realization the audience was meant to feel, not be told. Do you think the greatest inheritance is what we receive or what we finally learn to give away gently? Elias had provided housing, yes, a job, yes, school fees, yes. But what rose highest in the end wasn't the help given, it was the potential recognized. It was the trust earned slowly. It was the kindness learned sideways between children. It was the proof that brilliance exists everywhere, waiting for someone calm enough to stop, kneel, listen, and say, "You deserve a place inside the world, not beside it."
Time has a way of folding moments into quiet reflections. 11 years later, Elias sits in his study, the city lights outside a soft blur, and he remembers that afternoon by the school fence as if it were yesterday. Can you feel how some memories stay alive, not because of drama, but because of the life they quietly changed? He thinks of Samira, once the girl who solved algebra through a fence, now a doctoral graduate developing mathematics programs for underserved schools. He thinks of Leona, who went from sleeping in her car to designing systems that lift families out of homelessness. And he thinks of his own daughter, Alina, who learned humility, patience, and generosity by watching someone succeed despite having nothing. Where are you watching from as this reflection unfolds? The truth is, the exchange was never one-directional. Both families taught each other essential lessons. Samira taught Alina how intelligence and character exist independently of wealth. Alina taught Samira about trust and opportunity. Leona taught Elias about dignity and persistence. And Elias, in turn, learned that recognizing potential is often more transformative than providing comfort. 11 years later, independence has been restored. Dignity has been preserved. Connections remain alive, not as obligations, but as choices made from respect and care. These are the quiet victories that don't make headlines, but shift the world for everyone involved. Have you ever noticed how the smallest acts of recognition ripple far beyond their moment? Samira and Leona moved out of temporary housing after 18 months, earning a home of their own through effort, resilience, and talent. They insisted on paying Elias back, not because they doubted his generosity, but because they needed to reclaim agency. It was a simple lesson. A hand up is meaningful only when it does not replace one's own steps forward. Alina, now a young adult, volunteers weekly, tutors, and channels her privilege into tangible acts of empathy. She and Samira remain best friends, and together they model a world where opportunity is shared, not hoarded. Elias often reflects on the moment by the fence. What looked like a simple math lesson was really a masterclass in human potential. And here's a question for you, softly, as you sit with this story. How often do we overlook the brilliance hiding in unexpected places? How many people pass by potential because it doesn't look like opportunity on paper? What could happen if you paused just long enough to recognize it? Before we close, there's another story waiting after this one, a missing echo that completes the feeling. Click on the next video. "Can I sit here?" asked the one-legged girl. The single dad's response is viral. And you'll see how a simple act of inclusion teaches empathy across generations, how dignity and respect change the life of a child in a single powerful moment, how small gestures can ripple outward, just like the fence moment did years ago. There's a continuity here. The lessons aren't finished. Your reflection, your empathy, your recognition of overlooked potential, that continues the story too. Finally, let me ask
It
you,
says they
how did
found the
this
hidden
story
treasure
feel to
behind the
you?
waterfall.
Did it touch you
Really?
differently than expected?
Let's see
Where
what
are you
happens
listening
next.
from? Would you follow another chapter like this? Pause for a moment. Consider the people around you, the untapped brilliance you might overlook, the ways a single act of recognition could ripple outward. Because true wealth is not in dollars. True wealth is character. Opportunity is everywhere if we only see it. Teachers appear in unexpected forms, and human investment changes everything. And now, go ahead, watch the next story. Let the echo continue.